Welcome back to the Listen Nissim Show. I am your host, Nissim, and today I'm back with a good friend, Lucas Wozniak. How are you?
I'm doing very well. It's great to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
We've known each other for quite a while now, huh?
Yeah, 4 years of studying film at Temple.
And when was the first time we really met?
That is hard to remember back to. I mean, probably one of our intro classes, unless it comes to your mind.
Media Arts 1, 2?
I took combined, so maybe we met in media and culture, or just, were you in videography? I don't know.
I guess Perry. We took filmmaking.
Yeah, definitely by sophomore year.
Yeah.
We had the classic David Perry. Has he been on the podcast?
Not yet. As a phone caller, actually. He was on the Bailey Meyer show. And you and I kind of went through interesting experiences. I mean, right now we're in our fourth year, just finished, and we've kind of went through a similar track from the first year. Let's start with your background and your grandparents and how you got to where you are today.
Interesting. So, yeah, my grandparents are actually from Poland, and they didn't meet in Poland, at least on my mother's side of the family. My grandmother's family was basically exiled from their homeland and taken to Siberia during World War II, and she grew up in this whole kind of long trajectory around the world. She had lost a brother in Siberia and then moved to Iran while migrating to Tanzania for high school and stayed there a few years, and then eventually when the war was over they moved back to London for a little while, and that's where she met her husband, my grandfather.
Why did they go to Iran?
I think that was just a military base for the Polish army, and it was part of the process of migration, kind of a checkpoint after Russia.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Then she met your grandfather.
Yeah. They moved to London, and my grandfather was in the Polish army during the war, had fought in, I think, Egypt and Italy, and then moved back to England, and they met in Derby during some dancing, and then took the ship to Buffalo, New York, which had a Polish immigrant community, and built a house there and started a new life.
And what about the other side?
The other side I'm not as sure about. My grandmother on my father's side was born in America, and they were from Russia and Poland as well, but I'm not sure of the whole history. I think it kind of got lost in the time.
Are any of them living now?
The grandmother is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Where does she live now?
She lives in Buffalo as well. So my parents grew up only a few blocks away from each other in a similar Polish kind of traditional community.
That's how they met?
Yeah. Actually, my mother's brother was my dad's best friend.
Oh, interesting. Your mother's brother was your dad's best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So your uncle.
Yeah. They're still close, and he lives in Boston now, but
that's really cool.
It was nice to have that tight-knit vibe, yeah.
And how did you end up in Philadelphia?
So I only came to Philadelphia from Harrisburg, where I grew up, for Temple University, and because the film school really attracted me for its kind of like independent focus and desire to like get you to cultivate your own voice as a filmmaker rather than worry so much about the system that's already out there. They wanted you to, develop an artistic identity, it seemed, as their focal point, which they also offered nice scholarships and just a great local kind of approach to college. Yeah.
Talk about your involvement in the arts during high school and middle school times.
Sure. So I really got involved with the arts around age 8 with piano. I had been begging my father to take lessons for several years, and finally signed me up, and then from there it kind of just kept spiraling to guitar and trumpet, playing in like the jazz band, and I got into producing electronic music for a while, actually, and then short films and like short stories, and film then became an obvious answer for a major around junior year. I'd actually switched from a focus on wanting to be a neurosurgeon more because I was just deeply embedded in studies and scientific kind of attitude, and I think the prestige was attracting me, but I had a sort of existential crisis in a way where I was really reflecting on like, what is this one life all about? And I decided to like think more about my passions that I would sacrifice my life for, regardless of, income, for example.
What triggered that thought?
I think it was a mixture of a high school breakup and, dealing the motions of that and the vulnerability, and realizing like life is about this, I don't know, the sweetness of human connection that I wanted to continue to like focus on through filmmaking and spreading empathy through these films that touch on like communication across different social groups.
Mm-hmm. And how'd you get into electronic dance music production?
Yeah, so that was more of just an independent interest. I think I had always been like playing around with composition within piano and guitar, and wanted a way to bring it together and make it more experimental. And I found some like free software. Well, I found Ableton Live, and one of my good friends, Kyle Wotring, who's also a film major here, was getting into it at a similar time, and we kind of shared the interest and jumped into it together.
You and Kyle went to high school together?
Yes.
Or I guess you grew up together in the same neighborhood?
No, we didn't really know each other till 9th grade homeroom, and then over the years we got closer and closer as we realized our interests overlapped with music and film.
Interesting. So do you have any siblings that were involved in media that you got this passion from?
Actually, no. My brothers took different paths. One went to engineering, structural engineering, and the other to science and molecular biology. And I think it kind of just happened of its own, starting from my initial like passion for music, and my parents were supportive. I had an uncle who, made some music, but that was kind of a distant influence.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Hopefully we can get Kyle on the show to talk a little bit about your relationship with him and his relationship with me in terms of my side project as well.
Yeah.
So how many schools did you end up applying to after high school?
I would say about 6 to 8, I think.
Were they all because of the film program?
Yeah, it was all about film, and then that in parallel with scholarships.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you do on your testing, your SATs and ACTs?
Fairly well. I studied very hard, and I was always very academically focused. So,
what triggered that?
That is a good question as well. I don't know. In middle school, I was already deeply involved with academics, and I went to this kind of experimental primary school, elementary school before middle school, that was focused on finding your own academic interests and then helping you cultivate that, but also allowing you to be flexible with like what grade level you were studying at. So I was able to like advance in math a few years ahead and kind of go at my own pace with certain subjects, and also immerse myself in some arts. Yeah.
And that eventually helped you get into the honors program at Temple, which allows us to do this podcast, actually.
Right, yeah, that's what grants us the equipment.
And what benefits have you seen with this program?
I would say one of the main ones is just the financial ease, as well as the stipends that a lot of students within honors are offered, which allowed me to go to Argentina, for example, after freshman year and work on documentary work in Buenos Aires, and really, expanded my view of the world and multiculturalism and becoming like a global citizen kind of minded artist.
What'd you do there specifically?
I worked on a team of communication volunteers with Voluntario Global, and we made short documentaries about their projects in and around Buenos Aires, from kindergartens to soup kitchens to like sustainable gardens. And
what's the final product now?
So the final product was a series of videos that got released on their YouTube channel to show the work they're doing in the world, and also help them develop a course for new volunteers to understand Buenos Aires culture by interviewing a lot of local cultural spokespersons about what Argentine identity means to them and what the volunteer experience has looked like.
At the time, did you know David Romberg, the professor?
No. I actually still don't really know him.
Oh.
I just heard of his travels to Brazil, right?
Buenos Aires.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Lots of overlap potentially there.
Very cool. Yeah.
So one of the segments on the show, because we're into music, is we listen to a traditional Jewish song, and then we'll listen to the modern rendition of it, because we're all about bridging the gap between old and new. So let's listen to the first one, and you can let me know what you think afterwards. This single is called Rebbe Rebbe by a really great Jewish singer named Yehuda Green.
Rebbe, 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 wir willen sich mit Kasche sein zu dir. Rebbe, 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 wir willen sich mit Kasche sein zu dir. Rebbe, 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 wir willen sich mit Kasche sein zu dir. Rebbe, 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 wir willen sich mit Kasche sein zu dir. Hineni, מקשר נפשי, רוחי ונשמתי. הנני מקשר נפשי, רוחי ונשמתי.
To give a little background on the song, it was composed by Reb Pinchas Pomp, Rosh Mostos Dino, Poland, and brought about with the help of Hamashpia Baruch Mordechai Mota Frank. And this song is supposedly a great way to help connect with their Rebbe and help strengthen their kavana, which means intention. Many people will benefit from finding a personal mentor where they can share their thoughts with. Everybody needs some way to release. So, Lucas, what do you think about the song and any aspect of it?
I appreciate the passion in the voice. I feel like it's very much, I don't know, a form of chanting almost. It seems very, like you're saying, I can sense the intention, like this sort of sacred intent.
Mm-hmm. Ready for the modern rendition?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. So, Lucas, what do you think?
I like the addition of the bass line, as all modern tracks seem to be infused with. Yeah, it seems like it's mostly remixed just with a drum added, right?
Yeah.
Just to make it more, I don't know, dance-oriented.
What are your thoughts about bridging the gap between old and new?
I think it's, I'm glad that, you know, the idea of remix can allow you to recycle and keep, you know, the bulk of the traditional message and sound for modern audiences while it's still appealing to their aesthetic interests. So I think it's very important to try to find ways to bridge that gap, so because there's still so much to learn from traditional form.
Beautifully said. So continuing on with your story, your freshman year here, you determined that you like to be a film and media arts major. What made you make that decision versus music?
So I always struggled with narrowing down my interests, creative interests or academic interests, and film allowed me to bridge a lot of those mediums, because you could use the soundtrack. Apply music to soundtrack and also sound design, and apply my background in kind of, you know, loving short stories and novels, and just like the idea of the human experience and how can you apply that more viscerally through film by combining the image and the sound.
In your first year, how did you find your academic experience to be in terms of maybe some of the film and gen ed courses that you took?
I was really happy with Temple's kind of inclusion of the gen ed program because it allowed me to branch out of just, film technicality and film, philosophy and theory and study like creative acts, which was like a short story writing course, or there was a music course that studied music all around the world, from Chinese opera to like Sufi chanting. And yeah, it was just really influential on some of my artistic choices.
Did you take any honors courses at the time?
Yeah, those were actually both honors courses. And I took honors. Actually, it's hard to think back, honestly. But I think what was the beneficial about the honors part of it was the smaller class size. And I think the honors teacher in the curriculum goes a little deeper.
And then in your sophomore year, when you were faced with the option of concentrating in the Bachelor of Fine Arts program in directing or screenwriting or cinematography, how did you choose?
So I chose directing. That was what I always went to school with the intention of pursuing, just because it allows you to wear so many caps and communicate across departments, kind of similar to my having trouble narrowing down the interest and specializing in one thing, and also allowing a lot of that human communication to play out as you're just communicating to so many different people and learning so many different ways to talk and, work with actors and explore like emotions. So I chose directing, and it also included like writing as well, which is great because I had all these, dreams and visions I had been writing down over the years. I could finally start to realize in a more professional and like well-rounded context. But I don't know if you want me to share, because my trajectory actually got interrupted as I got a little disillusioned with the program after 1 year in it, of junior year. I still struggled with narrowing down the interest, and I realized there was this media arts concentration, which would allow me to branch out and explore other technologies and art forms and kind of merge them into like these interactive multimedia installations, which seemed much more to reflect like my multidimensional thinking, because I'm also a philosophy minor. So just how I had so many complex ideas, it was hard to be able to convey them in one script, and instead I wanted kind of these like evolving open-ended mediums that could allow me to express some of these ideas. And that's today led me to virtual reality, which is what I focus on this last semester.
And tell us about that installation project that you had last week.
Sure. So that was a project I developed since January that is basically exploring in kind of a cabinet of curiosities way what VR can offer in terms of, in one sense, like bringing abstract ideas into like concrete firsthand experience. For example, like ocean waste pollution and its effect on whale populations. You can actually, for people who can't, travel to the ocean and see firsthand these effects of maybe small actions that they think are kind of trivial, you can see how ocean waste is literally, affecting certain whale populations and pop up statistics that, like I had a live counter of tons of ocean waste that generates dumpsters in the scene. And I think I would like to continue to develop like more of a game atmosphere around it. So you have to navigate around this kind of tricky terrain generated by that number and realize the stakes of this kind of usually abstract, distant statistic.
What are your future plans with VR?
So in the future, I want to keep going down this path of how do we bring real world issues into VR and allow us to process them, and trying to use VR as more of a tool to allow us to connect more deeply with each other outside of it, because I'm very wary of the isolating and alienating tendencies of VR that you might have seen in like Ready Player One, where it becomes an escape from a dystopian world, or you're not communicating with other people, but rather these like fantasies of your own experience and like of world domination. You can create any kind of wild or wicked, scenario in VR, but I've seen a lot of hopeful applications. I can mention one's called The Machine to Be Another, in which two people both don headsets, and each headset has a first-person camera that if you're in one headset, you see out of your partner's camera, and if you look down, like you kind of look around in similar directions, and it seems like you're in their body while they're like narrating about their lived experience, and that could be a way to kind of really connect with people across social or bodily difference.
I saw one like that about refugees. Is that the same one?
It might have. It's been used in many different contexts, so it very well could be. Yeah. But
another one I'm thinking of is one that helps empathize with what it's like to be homeless, where you're sitting in your office and you just lose your job, and now you need to sell things, but eventually you need to live in your car, but you can't live in your car because it's against city rules. So then you're living on the bus. And there's a really interesting part where you have your backpack, the only thing that you own, in front of you. But then there's this creepy guy to your right who plays around with homeless people in a mean way. And you can look at both at the same time, but every time you look at one, the person either comes closer or the backpack goes further away from you, kind of giving you the sense of what it's like to have to always be worried about your belongings and your safety. And the only way to get the guy to move back is to stare at him, and then he would slowly move back.
That's great. Yeah, I really want to play more with interactivity in VR too, because I think that's one of the most exciting aspects is how you can have, the participants' actions have consequences that play out in real time. And you can see more clearly, like another scene that I created is tracing the effects of like energy intensive lifestyles on distant communities, coal mining specifically, like places where coal mining has, like coal companies have come and, remove mountaintops and the effects on local community members, that I was able to create a sort of documentary immersive experience where you're actually like traveling to this like virtual Appalachian landscape. And I interviewed a community leader there, and she's telling stories while images of the land like pop up. And I think it just, especially for people, again, who can't travel so easily to these places, you can get much more connected to the real life experience and, again, realize the stakes of sometimes like trivial seeming action. And also, I mean, it's a medium that its application extends so far beyond pure entertainment to any field, really. Like all sorts of companies are getting interested in VR, from medical companies using it to practice surgery, or psychology and therapy where PTSD patients can kind of relive their traumatic experiences in a more healing and process all of that.
Where do you see the future of VR going in terms of hardware?
In terms of hardware, I see it becoming more and more full-bodied interactive, in the sense of they're already developing the new Vive headset that responds to your eye movements and focuses certain objects depending on where you look, while the periphery becomes blurred, and haptic feedback with like gloves that would actually track more of your individual hand movements and like touching something with your pinky instead of just clicking it with one remote. Or even room scale VR is expanding into like larger warehouses, or as the headsets become wireless, it'll allow people to navigate different interfaces and landscapes, where it can just, I think, become more and more ingrained in terms of real-world experiences, instead of being what it started out as, is just sitting in a chair, looking around with your head. Now you can step more and more into this lived experience.
The new library, did you hear about what they're going to have?
Yeah, they're going to have a whole floor, right, of their VR rooms and all sorts of new tech. Yeah.
It's going to be incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad that as alumni we have the privilege to join them.
During your time in LA, did you have any VR experiences?
I actually didn't. I was still, I really only got into VR in the past several months, so I was more into music video direction back then.
Tell us about your internship, if you may.
Sure. So I had two, actually, and they kind of aligned in some ways. One was more music-focused, called Jam in the Van, where I helped record these live concerts in their studio in a van, and then edit short promo videos for the bands and upload their music to Spotify. And I just got kind of the behind the scenes of a small band management and tour company. And the other one was more in line with my major, which is, the actual directing aspect. It was called Street Poets, and they work with youth who have been incarcerated, and they use poetry as a way to process that event, and they wanted to start creating music videos with their yearly album. So we got to collaborate with the youth and direct these grassroots music videos around LA. And that was really exciting.
Looking back, would you have chosen any other different type of internship?
At this point, I would probably have gone more the new media direction and looked into, because I know LA does have a VR scene, so. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, I'm glad I had those experiences, because they really shaped me in terms of my ability to communicate and kind of handle so many, as a director, you're handling so many elements that seem so unpredictable, and to be able to cope with that stress is kind of a skill you can learn over time that helped me out a lot.
When you landed in LA, did you have both of the internships secure?
Yeah.
How early did you start applying for them?
I think about a month before I departed in April.
Were you worried about finding an internship?
For a time, they kind of guarantee that you'll find one. They said like 99 or 100% of students get one, but in terms of the relevance, I was worried about that because I've heard of people who maybe get stuck in an archive facility that they have no interest for, so I'm really glad how it panned out, though.
And did you stay with the students at Oakwood Apartments?
Yes.
How was that experience? Worth it?
Yeah, I think it was worth it in the sense of being in that community and having 3 roommates who are, kind of become your growing friends over the semester, because I know some people have found their own dwellings outside of Oakwood, but it could quickly get isolating being in a huge new city. And also, they had several events at the Oakwood that were just nice to be able to walk down, and a gym and pool built in, for chilling. And it was a great location, yeah.
Did you volunteer for any conferences during your time?
I might have, but I can't remember right now. Yeah, maybe a film festival. Mostly, I actually volunteered for sets, working as like a grip or a gaff.
And did you have your own car at that point?
I was able to borrow my brother's car, who lives in San Diego.
Cool. Did you also do a cross country?
Yes, yeah. In a way, that was the highlight of the whole summer for sure, because I got to see the other faces of America that I could only imagine before. We camped at a lot of national parks and saw a lot of monuments and just the sheer beauty of the wild that is still out there and needs protecting. So it was a great trip.
And how many credits were you taking total? How many classes?
I think just 2 classes, the internship, and then I had a visiting artist class, which was I think a writing intensive or something. And
did a lot of interesting people come by?
Yeah. It was great because you got to look at the whole industry of film and music as well. There were, music video artists or managers there. And we got to just hear people's first-person accounts of the usually long and unpredictable route to where they were and how they, kept focus and kept their network growing, and eventually things work out. It might take a lot longer than you think. It might happen quick. You never know when a connection will be made and you'll meet the director of your dreams and be able to work on set with them. But it was really encouraging just to hear all these people from all over the country and world actually talking about how they made it to LA and were able to realize a bulk of their dreams.
Was the writing component of it ever bothersome or getting in the way of your fun?
In a way, yeah, because we had to write several pages of reflection each week, and sometimes it seemed helpful, but other times it was maybe excessive, and it would be nicer to have more time to experience just the raw culture and more courage to go out about town.
Mm-hmm. So, if I may, let's move on to your philosophy minor. A question that I always think about is, has everything that happened in the past been for a reason? And if so, was that a reason that's ultimately for your good, or the person who's thinking about this question?
It's a very interesting question. I think about it a lot, actually. I think it plays in with the idea of karma and how, in a way, it might not have been a predefined reason, like this perfect order that necessarily led to everything, because you don't really know where things are going till they happen. And I think we rationalize a lot of what was kind of just chaos in a way, looking back on things and try to connect the dots when it's really too vast of a, lived experience to really sum up. But I think there is a way to look back on everything and find meaning in it and realize it has shaped your character and your life situation, and everything contains a lesson of some sort that can help you live your life now and prepare for the future. And I think that's why it's important to cherish all aspects of our past, especially, even the harder trials, because that's where we can pull on our deepest inner resources and also connect more as humans in those difficult experiences.
If this is true, then is regret possible?
I think regret is inevitable in the sense of, just being an idealist and realizing, like, I had this dream and, like, it's never going to be perfect, but, I keep wanting to force that image onto the world. But, I think regret can be healthy in some ways because you learn that some decisions you made weren't for the best, and hopefully you can not make the same ones in the future.
The professor David Romberg, who I mentioned earlier, one time after his winter break trip to Buenos Aires to finish his film, which he was like deep in the forest for and underwater for some scenes, he said, coming back, that filmmaking is suffering.
Suffer for your art is what I hear often here at Temple. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of productivity in that state of kind of tension and like stress, but it's important to not become overwhelmed to the point of paralysis, which I've definitely experienced at times in terms of like writer's block and perfectionism, but I'm learning to kind of cope with that ambiguity more.
Awesome. And why did you choose the LA program last summer and not this upcoming summer after you've graduated?
I actually chose it was the summer before last summer.
Sophomore.
Yeah, and that was just an opportune summer for me because I was also very interested in kind of like after going to Argentina, I was very interested in this idea of travel and like becoming more multiculturally focused and, you know, learning about other nations and how they live and their histories. And the idea of ending up in LA in a way seems like you can get lost in kind of like the popular media culture there and forget about the rest of the world in a way. And I mean, that's just one critique of it, but I had several, I had an inkling that I wouldn't necessarily want to move out there permanently, and I wanted to get that test before it was, you know, after graduation. And if I realized I didn't like it then, I would be even more lost. So now I could be prepared to like think of other opportunities in the meantime. But yeah, I mean, I enjoyed LA. I could see myself moving out there at some point. It's just there's so many new media centers opening up around the world and country that I think it'd be interesting to see where it spreads.
Did you make any summer plans?
Not yet. So I have quite a few paths I'm exploring because, again, it's just going to take some more reflection and listening to like my intuition. I'm considering like study or volunteering abroad or joining a startup or looking at grad school. So,
have you been involved in the startup community here in Philadelphia?
Not so much. Again, I kind of only veered that way this past semester or so when it came to like becoming interested in new tech. And that's where startup culture, you know, that's a haven for new tech and these innovative ideas, which is always in the background, but I didn't really realize there was this infrastructure already that I could get involved with and learn about, you know, how to create a business and how to join all these other people who have these ideas they want to bring into the world.
The viewers can't see, I mean the listeners, but if I could just describe, Lucas's hair is smooth, very beautiful flow on the top and the perfect size on the sides in terms of blending from top to sides. Can you just explain your process when you go get a haircut and when you style your hair in the morning?
Sure. So this was a hairstyle that I had a few years ago that I only came back to recently. And I don't know, it makes me feel more lively to throw it back and I don't know, just kind of have that like mane in a way. But I found this nice haircuttery in Chinatown that I kind of showed them an image of some random model that seemed interesting and appealing to me, and they brought it to life, and I was really impressed. So I have to give them credit to them, and I just use a basic styling gel. But yeah, it's just nice to have it out of my eyes and, I don't know, open up the forehead, and it just feels more radiant to me.
Do you go back to the same person every time?
I've only had this haircut for a couple months, and it was 2 sessions that I've had with him. But yeah, for now it's nice.
That's pretty good. Well, Kyle Wotring, the gentleman we mentioned earlier, he helped me when we made our first rendition of Shalom Aleichem for a honors DIY punk class. And he was using Ableton at the time, and it was really helpful. And normally we have callers calling into the show. This time, Kyle might be busy, so it could be interesting to change it up and leave him a voicemail.
7-1.
Change up the.
What should we tell him?
Change up the game.
4,
Wish him a happy graduation.
Yeah, we could do that.
Is not
You
available.
know, a reversal of
At the
expectations.
tone, please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Hey.
Kyle, thanks so much for joining the show, and happy graduation.
We miss you, and we miss your music. We hope you continue that passion of yours, and we hope you make it on the podcast.
Also, you have an incredible Crocodile Rock remix by Elton John that's on your QWERTY SoundCloud. We really love it. Anyways, thanks for joining the show. Talk to you later.
Love you,
Great.
Kyle.
Thanks so much, Kyle, for joining Kyle's voicemail for joining the show. And thank you to Lucas. It was really great to know you, and I hope we continue to stay in touch moving forward. And who knows where the world will take us,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm really glad you're staying involved with these crafts and the podcast, and I hope is G-Tronic's going to continue?
Yeah, we're going to release our second single. It's going to be a mashup of a song called Lechuna Ranena and a prayer, rather, called Shiru Lashem, and we'll see how it turns out. It's going to be incredible.
Awesome. Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, I'm curious what your plans are for the next several months. Do you have anything
I'm
concrete?
actually doing the LA program this summer.
Okay.
So we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll intern for Dimak, Steve Aoki's record label, or perhaps Sony Music Entertainment.
Great.
Or who knows,
Yeah.
Better late than never.
True. Yeah. I wish you the best, and yeah, it's been great knowing you as well.
Thanks so much, Lucas, for joining. And until next time, be well.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.